I am Sandeep Khanna. I've been blessed to have 3 different careers. I started in advertising, then I ran 3 CMO roles, and then I switched to the people side of things when I was leading learning and development for companies like Facebook and Grab. And then I trained to become a coach. And I found my true calling in life really in terms of helping people actualize their potential and really grow to the best of their abilities. So I'm passionate about happiness and culture, and that's why I guess I'm delighted to be here, because this is a subject very close to my heart, and I'm driven to help organizations create better cultures, better processes, and really create an environment that makes everybody shine and do their best.
Thank you, Sandeep, for this great introduction, and good evening, everybody. My name is Hoda Elsobky. I am an author, a speaker, and a happiness mentor. I am also a corporate trainer specialized in soft skills, and corporate coach and life coach. Talking about the topic today of building and fostering a culture of happiness at workplace is really my passion. I feel this is the right time to incorporate a culture and an infrastructure of happiness, of joy, of trust, of security at the workplace, especially that all employees are now making this transition to the office after 2.5 or more than 2.5 years of a pandemic and of remotely working from home. So my opinion is that happiness is a necessity nowadays, and it is not a luxury anymore. And I'm so glad to discuss this with Sandeep Khanna today, and to dig more into the details and what we can do to foster a culture of happiness actually at workplace. So Sandeep, let's start with the latest research and experiment, the real experiment that have been done, and that proved that happy employees is equal more than 12% increase in productivity. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Hoda. I think there's a lot of research out there which talks about the value of happiness. And I think if you were to just step back and try and understand as to why today happiness has become such a big subject, right? And we've all heard about the VUCA world and how volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity are really creating paradigm shifts in our lives and therefore in the workplace as well. And I think in the last 2 years, because of COVID, all these 4 factors got accentuated and actually amplified in a manner of speaking. And I think that's what has led to far more turmoil and people having to adjust to very different ways of living. And even now we hear about this whole movement of going back to office, for example. So how do people cope with a hybrid work environment? How do people cope with so much change that has been thrust upon them in the last couple of years? And therefore, I would say more than ever, I mean, when I began my career more than 3 decades ago, happiness was not such a big thing as it has become now. And I would say that all these forces that have been unleashed on the world today have actually created a need for happiness to become a necessity, as you mentioned, and why it is so important for organizations to appreciate that and really do something about it.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Sandeep. And I think also that nowadays employers are more conscious about the importance of mental health, the importance of well-being of their employees. Meanwhile, employees are more aware of their need also for happiness, for maybe security, tranquility, and to find joy and fulfillment at work. I think there are many initiatives done on that perspective, and many researches has been done. And maybe this is the right time to start to incorporate this new culture of finding happiness and fulfillment at workplace. Are there any initiative you think about to fulfill the need of both employees and employer? Because it is actually, I found out it is a bit difficult to make both sides happy. Because if we apply the system, for example, of a 4-day week work, you will find that employees are so happy and fulfilled and have more balance, have more autonomy at work. They say that 86% said they have more creativity and they found more balance of work life. But for the employers, it is not the same. Many said, so we need to cut maybe the salary for this 1 day off. It is 4 days per month. Other employers said that some jobs specifically, it is not convenient that they don't work 5 days, like the salespeople, for example. They have to obey they have to fulfill orders for a customer. They have to find out more, to hit numbers. They have to hit numbers and to meet targets. So employers also said that for junior employees, it is very difficult to make it 4 days because they need to be in the job. They need to learn from experienced people. They need to be in the culture of the work and not to work remotely 1 day. So what do you think? How can this work? And is it a good idea to start this 4-day plan and other initiative on that perspective, or it will be difficult somehow?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned this 4-day week issue, Hoda. I was in fact trawling LinkedIn and somebody had posted a poll exactly about this. And 93% people were in favor of a 4-day week. But you know, I have a slightly different take on the subject. And if you may permit me to just sort of share my thoughts. So I think the first important thing really is about the very notion of happiness, right? And I think, as somebody said, that happiness is a choice. So you choose happiness, right? So you choose to be happy. I mean, that's where you begin from, right? And I think that's one thing that people need to understand, that if their happiness is dependent on external factors, it will be temporary and momentary. But happiness really needs to come from a frame of mind or a mindset. So that's the first thing that I think it's important for people to understand about the whole subject of happiness. I think the second thing around happiness is that, especially whether it's work or otherwise, we bring our whole self to work. So it's rather difficult to be happy at work and while you're unhappy outside work. So if our personal lives are not sorted, it's rather difficult for us to really show much happiness at work, because we are the same person really, inside or outside work. So therefore, I think some inner engineering or some inner transformation is important for people to feel more settled, whether it is their finances, their relationships, or what have you, as people, you know, mentally. Now, assuming that is set, that we are essentially happy with life, then it's about finding how can we create more happiness at work. And again, lots of research has been done to demonstrate that, you know, hygiene factors don't really create much happiness. In fact, I was reading somewhere that if you get a raise or a bonus for some job well done, your spike in motivation will be temporary or momentary. Whereas if your sense of personal self-esteem or recognition or appreciation is increased, you will be far more sort of sustainable in a happier frame of mind. So I think the real issue is, how can you help your employees create more meaning out of the work you are doing? And that is where, in my last 2 or 3 companies that I've worked at, we tried a lot to find the connection between the company's mission or purpose and the individual's personal job, how that connected to that company's mission or purpose. Because that then allows people to create far more meaning in what they do. And I think that's the challenge that every leader in an organization faces. So certain businesses, certain functions are easy to connect with the customer-facing mission or purpose, but for certain other functions, it gets a bit harder to find that connect. And I think that's where leadership needs to really focus on, to help sort of create that sense of meaning or fulfillment out of the joy of work that they're doing. So sorry for the long answer, but I think the 4-day week issue, to my mind, is a very tactical issue. I mean, people don't mind working longer as long as they are able to find fulfillment in what they're doing. And the organization has to create rituals or interventions that allow people to renew and recharge periodically. And therefore, they are able to come back with a greater positive energy to contribute to the company's goals.
Yeah, I like your answer, and it gave me the direction that maybe it should be the 4-day week work. I think this should be more of a personalized or customized according to functions. And I think you are the expert in building teams. So I think this needs kind of customization. The employer can sit with the employees or with the HR function and decide who should take, should have kind of remote work or flexible kind of work, because I think maybe a marketing sector can profit from this, because these people need to be always recharging, to always have new ideas, to be creative, and to have autonomy. And maybe the employer here look for the outcome and not the output. So if the employee can do the work the first 3 hours in the morning of the day, that's fine. So I think it is kind of framing some jobs that can work remotely or can work maybe 4 days, not 5 days per week. But I think this is still in question. To make it 4 days or 5 days, it is not yet. We don't have actual numbers and actual feedback about if this will work or not. But the trend is that for sure it will maybe enrich the work-life balance. It will give more time for people who have some other things to do beside their work, some creativity, some activities they would like to do, and to make them feel better about themselves, thus feeling better at work, as you said, because it's the same person. If you are happy at work, if you are happy at home, you should be happy at work. If you are happy at work, you should be happy at home. And it goes all in the same direction. Let's talk about another point, if you allow me to talk about fostering a culture of continuous feedback. I think this is the best foundation to start with, because this will help employees to be more engaged in the end result, be even more engaged in reaching the target and hitting their numbers. What do you think about this point?
No, I completely agree with you, Hoda. I think a culture of feedback is absolutely important because people need to know how they are doing and how they could do better. But unfortunately, the word feedback almost always elicits a threat response. You know, so if I were to tell a colleague of mine, hey, can I give you some feedback? The first thing is that they withdraw and they wonder what social threat is coming their way. So I think the word feedback comes with a lot of baggage because people feel threatened by the very nature of it. And again, having been a neuroscience-based coach, I have realized that it is so important to build trust to begin with before you even venture into giving feedback. And then again, coming from the school of positive psychology, it is always important to give 5 motivational pieces of feedback before you venture into giving a developmental feedback. So this 5:1 ratio is something that very few leaders actually practice. And that is why people always walk away from a feedback meeting feeling threatened, feeling discouraged and disheartened, and not feeling energized to do better. So I think there is a huge sort of body of research out there around feedback itself as to how it can be given better so that we ultimately create a more strengths-based philosophy at work, and we allow people to grow in their areas of strength and therefore manage the tension around the word feedback.
Yes, I agree with you, Sandeep. Building trust is the most important point at work, but I think it takes years sometimes. It is not it has to do with time, because by time you can gain trust in your managers, gain trust in your colleagues. Through experience and through maybe some momentums, you can gain trust or lose trust. Building trust at companies is definitely very important, and it has been applied in all multinational companies since long time already. But about the culture of feedback, I thought about maybe giving personal feedback. Maybe this won't be in front of a lot of people, maybe direct and personal feedback. Maybe this will do better as a way of giving a continuous feedback. So it can be one-on-one basis, I mean, not in front of everybody.
Yeah. No, even in that space, Hoda, I think one-on-one feedback is a great sort of way to manage your teams. And it flows into, like you said, trust takes a long time to build. So as leaders and managers, how much of our time are we really spending with our teams and truly in nurturing them and helping them grow? I think in my experience, there have been managers who would meet their team members once in 2 weeks in a formal way, whereas there were others who would meet them every week, right? So it's really a matter of prioritization as a leader, how much time you want to invest in creating the right one-on-one culture, because that is something that is a precursor to giving feedback, and how you use that opportunity, not only to talk about work, but about also non-work. And how do you create that compassion and that degree of connection with your individuals in your team, so that they feel that they are connected as human beings. And one thing again that I read recently, that human brains thrive on connections. So it's important to create more and more social capital and social connections, because that is how we are able to be a better version of ourselves.
Yes, and I like the word compassionate, because I think that compassionate leaders and employers are what we are actually looking for, especially nowadays after the pandemic. There are also some on-job therapy, some on-job healing, some on-job coaching have been introduced, and it proved to be very effective, since it is a one-on-one on a one-on-one basis. So I think it proved to be very effective, and it can lead to self-actualization and fulfillment, and maybe some increase in productivity, and to eliminate the misunderstanding sometimes between colleagues, between employer and his employers and employees, and vice versa. So let's go to another point also, which became crucial at the surface after these 2 years of remote work. And this point is the time management. People were really lost during the pandemic when they were working from home. And many employees reported that they work even longer time than before, because they are available all day long through emails, through mobile phones, through WhatsApp, and they have to answer the call all day long. So I think most employees, they needed, and employers, kind of a time management training or time management course to adjust this imbalance between work and life. So what do you think of the importance of these courses of time management, whether it is an online, whether it is on office, and how they were developed? Maybe now we need the more advanced courses of time management and well-developed training tailored for the circumstances right now at workplace.
No, you're so right. And I think time management flows in very well into the idea you shared some time back around work-life balance, or integration, as I call it. What's happened now is that, our lives have become fused, and it's very hard to separate work and life, especially when we are in a hybrid work scenario. And if you think about it, the 9-to-5 work time is a relic of the industrial age. When you ran factories and you ran pretty repetitive jobs, that is when the shift culture or the 9-to-5 culture took root. But as we have moved to a services culture, or a far more, creative sort of revolution in the workplace, I think it's also time for us to rethink how we manage our time. And it is all about taking the 24 hours that we have at our disposal and dividing that up between work and life. So it is not necessary that people should only work 9 to 5. They could work 9 to 1, take a 2-hour break, and then spend time with their kids, and then come back and work later in the evenings. All these permutations are now possible because the nature of work does not require you to function in that 8-hour time band. The 8 hours could be split across the day into multiple 2-hour sort of bursts. So I think it's important to recognize that, and then in that process, see how do you manage your time? Because there is a danger of being always on. And I think that is what also creates the stress and strain for a lot of people. So how do you encourage people to, put some guardrails around technology, and to some guardrails around when you're not available for work, because that is your personal time. So I think it also calls for a lot of collaboration and clarity in terms of how people should respect each other's boundaries. And having worked in global organizations, I realized that becomes even harder when your remote teams are sitting in Europe or US and you are in Asia. How do you deal with that? And how do you ensure that everybody still gets some downtime? Because otherwise, like one of my ex-colleagues would say, she was always on because she was living in a geography where somebody or the other was always asking her for work, and because it was a global company. So I think it's important for leaders and managers to also recognize how to put guardrails and boundaries around time.
Yes, and this also leads me to another important pointer in today's talk, and that is, I believe that the trend of the work is going toward entrepreneurial mindset, in the sense that maybe to make employees happy, maybe you have to give them this freedom, this latitude, and maybe more dynamic, because we are leading more dynamic lives nowadays. It is not static and it is not routine based like old days. So maybe the entrepreneurial mindset is a very good point to start with at work. If employees feel that they are responsible for their own work, they have all the creativity, they have the flexibility to work on their own way, and to hit, of course, number and to achieve target, but they have kind of autonomy, they're totally responsible for their work. Maybe this from the side will make them feel more fulfilled and more satisfied and more responsible. And even some employees reported working on a 4-day basis. They reported that they worked very hard on the 4 days because they felt they have 1 day less, and they need to do their best so that employers are happy by their performance. So we need really to be very flexible nowadays and to think out of the box in terms of adjusting the new culture at workplace. So what do you think of this entrepreneurial mindset? Is it feasible at work, or it is something feasible only if you are really an entrepreneur and you work you run a private business, you don't work for a company? Is it something feasible?
No, I love that idea, Hoda. And I think in one of my previous companies that I worked for, one of the lines we welcomed newcomers said, this is your company. So, that was the opening line they received when they started off onboarding on day one. And I think, so being entrepreneurial and having a sense of ownership is so critical today for people to, again, find that meaning at work that I spoke about some time back. But at the same time, I think it comes with certain, factors to consider. I think one is it should be ingrained into the company culture, because that is what will make people feel more empowered and responsible. And by that, what I mean is there should be adequate psychological safety so that people are able to take risks also. Entrepreneurship is about taking calculated risks, because otherwise you would not have entrepreneurs. They thrive on risk taking. At the same time, if you penalize people for taking risks, then they will not do that and they will play it safe. So how do you build a culture which is psychologically safe? And as one author said, how do you create fearless organizations so that you're able to help people take risks and then learn from the mistakes that they make? And therefore, you create a very high growth mindset in the organization as well. So I think these concepts also need to be put into place for that spirit of entrepreneurship to thrive, because otherwise it'll feel like a bit just disjointed. And that's my view.
Yes, I like your views, and I think we talked about many topics that needed to be maybe discussed further. We discussed growth mindset versus fixed mindset. We discussed the entrepreneurial mindset. We discussed some personalized or customized solution. We talked about building teams, about time management courses, about creativity, about increasing latitude, freedom, and about autonomy and fulfillment and responsibility at job. And these are all big titles. What I would like to ask you today is, do you have any happiness activities or happiness initiative or creativity, some infrastructure, I mean, culture to foster happiness at workplace? Do you have any ideas in mind, activity or initiative on that perspective, so that we can lead to a more happy environment for employees and for employer? And one point I forgot, I want to mention also, how about competition at work? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is it required nowadays, or on the contrary, we are trying to build trust, to make autonomy, to give an entrepreneurial mindset to the employee? So what do you think about that, Sandeep?
Well, I think so. The spirit of competition is good, but I think it has moved towards collaboration a lot, because today the unit of work in most companies is the team and no longer the individual. So it is teams that come together and make things happen. So it's really at a team level, how do you create more collaboration? How do you create more collaboration across cross-functional teams and across geographies and all that? So I would say that has become the bigger area of development, more than just pure play competition, to my mind. And coming to your question around happiness generating activities, I mean, I think there isn't really a playbook there. It really stems from what kind of a culture do you have as an organization to start with, and what are the rituals you want to create to foster that culture. I think that's the introspection companies need to make. You know, what are they all about, and what they believe in from a value standpoint. Because if they believe in creating a value around, well-being, for example, then there are so many things that you can do if you truly believe in that. In one of the companies I worked with earlier, we had a program called Fuel, which was really harnessing the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energies, and then not just offering that as a theory, but linking it into benefits, for example, linking it into even performance, and highlighting that as an approach to how you work. So it kind of straddles the entire employee life cycle experience at one level, but I think it all starts from culture. What is it that you want to be as an organization? And then you can figure out what kind of happiness activities you want to create there.
So again, we go to the point of customized solution. Yeah. And I believe in it very much. But also we talked, I like the trend that we are now going into more of collaboration than into competition. What do you think that personal life has to do with this in the workplace today? How important the personal life, and personal life should be really personal, or people should get together, make some social gatherings, some social events, so families get to know each other, or personal life should remain personal life?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, really. But what I have seen is that, if you can have a best friend at work, and this has been proven by research again, productivity goes up manyfold, right? So it's really about creating a family at work to some extent, with and that just becomes an extended social circle for you. If the people you work with at work are truly your great friends, it has proven to be a clear marker for higher engagement and a better life. So I think, and I'm not saying that all your friends need to be at workplace, but I'm just saying that if you can find people at work who can become good friends, it ultimately creates better teams and a better productivity and performance at the end of the day. So it's really about trying to find that connection to some extent. We all have our personal lives and our personal friends, which is historical. But when we go into a workplace, if we can expand our circle of friends there, I think it can be very, very powerful.
Yes, connection is very important, and being compassionate also is very important, and it gives the sense of trust and building trust at workplace. So the point we are coming to is that I think that outcome is very important, more important even than output. So whatever the outcome required by the company, by the employer, if when you reach it, then the output is not as important as the outcome, I think. And for a last word, what would you say to people who are so excited or who are very terrified by this new shift of work and of mode of work in the direction of finding happiness at workplace?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not a guru there.
You can summarize the episode.
Yeah, but I think, like I said at the very beginning, it's really important to be happy. So choose happiness. I think that's the first thing, and then figure out what really contributes to your happiness, or what can accentuate your happiness. And from a work standpoint, if you can find meaning in what you're doing, if that is what you wake up to feeling totally energized, I think that's really very important as a way forward. And finally, I would say, if you're able to create a culture of collaboration, of where you count, where you feel belonged and included, and where your opinions matter, I think those are the markers, again, for people to feel that, yes, I am doing something powerful and significant in the workplace. And I think that's what starts to make people feel happier. So there are the hygiene factors. I mean, you can't take away the fact that there is money, there are benefits, there are some perks that companies offer, free food and all that, but that's just hygiene. I think motivation really comes from a feeling that you are part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's what drives ultimately happiness at work.
Very good. And to be fulfilled is you have to feel part of a bigger something, which is the company maybe goals, the company culture they're running after. So I think this is a very good conclusion to end this episode with. It was great connecting with you today. We talked about mental health, we talked about well-being, about fulfillment, about collaboration, about creativity, about autonomy, about fulfillment at workplace. What else we talked about? Of course, we talked about happiness is a choice, and it is really a choice. I agree with you. Happiness and positivity are the main drive for success. And this is backed by research and by scientific work done on this perspective. I am very passionate about happiness as a topic. I am passionate about coaching, about training, about helping and mentoring on job and on personal life. And we'd be so glad to help everybody on that perspective.
So I'm very passionate about three things: about coaching, about building culture, and about helping people be in a better space and building great high-performing teams. So that's really where is the intersection of all of that is my sort of core being. And I would love to participate and work with leaders who are interested in these areas.
It was a great pleasure connecting with you today. Thank you very much. And maybe we meet again in other episodes talking about fostering a culture of happiness at workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Hoda. You were amazing. Yeah, it was really wonderful how you facilitated today and the ideas that you were able to assimilate and put together. And I hope the audience finds value in this discussion, because this is a very relevant and meaningful subject for today's times. And I'm glad that DLC is, taking the effort to at least bring it to life.